It's a new iPhone owner's nightmare. A thief snatches his victim's phone out of his hands and runs off. The thief immediately makes use of iOS 7's new Control Center feature to turn on airplane mode from the lock screen. The victim knows that his iPhone is probably lost for good, but he is still confident that Apple's Find My iPhone service will be able to erase it remotely. The victim logs into iCloud and proceeds to register his iPhone to be wiped. Angry that his phone was stolen, he adds a snide message to the thief. Back at his lair, the thief has all the time in the world to photograph any potentially useful latent fingerprints on the phone, or since he can see that the phone is protected by a 4-digit PIN, he can try all of the most common ones. Having given up on unlocking the phone with a PIN, the thief uses one of his photographs to create a spoof fingerprint with which he hopes to access the phone. After about an hour of work, the thief has a usable wood glue spoof which he uses to unlock the phone. He decides he wants to also take ownership of the device, so he goes into iCloud and reads the Apple ID. Knowing that most people grant their iPhones access not only to their everyday email accounts, but also to any secondary email addresses they might have, the thief uses Apple's password reset function to send a reset token to himself on the victim's device. To receive this token, the thief must allow the iPhone to connect to the internet just long enough to receive email, but not long enough to be wiped by Apple. This has been possible 5 times in a row on the same phone. Having heard the email chime, the thief goes into the victim's email to inspect the password reset token that arrived from Apple. The thief selects the link and copies it into the phone's Notes app. From there, he can transcribe the URL into the browser on his laptop. With the valid password reset token from Apple, the thief is able to set his own password for the victim's Apple ID. This gives him complete control of the victim's iCloud and iTunes account, along with any other Apple services tied to this credential. From the Find My iPhone service, the thief is able to remove the iPhone from the victim's account, which allows him to reactivate the victim's device under new ownership. There is, however, still an erase flag on the device. Having taken ownership of the victim's iCloud account, however, the thief knows that even with iOS 7's new activation lock feature, he will have no trouble taking ownership of the device as well. He connects the phone to the internet and waits for it to be wiped. On the freshly erased iPhone, the thief sees the snide message from the victim and decides to restore the device from his newly hijacked iCloud account so that he can milk the victim's iPhone for all it's worth. After entering the password he himself chose and agreeing to Apple's terms and conditions, the thief is able to choose which of the victim's backups to restore from. After a few minutes, the phone has restarted, again under the ownership of the hijacked Apple ID. The thief is able to enter his own password a few times, choose his own PIN code, and begin snooping around on the phone as much as he likes. In this case, the thief decides to snoop around in the victim's Gmail account. Using the iPhone's privileges, the thief is determined to mount a social engineering attack and writes an email to the contact labeled Mom in the victim's contacts. As if that weren't invasive enough, the thief decides to see if he can leverage the iPhone SIM card to escalate his privileges and completely hijack the victim's Gmail account, locking the real owner out forever. With the iPhone's phone number, all he has to do is wait for the password reset code to arrive via SMS. With the verification code, the thief can take over the victim's Gmail account, all of the associated Google accounts, as well as any online account, for example Facebook or eBay, which is set to send password reset emails to the victim's primary email address. Apple device security can be improved in the following ways. First, Apple should make airplane mode inaccessible from the lock screen by default and require a passcode, not just a fingerprint, anytime airplane mode was activated or the SIM card was removed. Second, during Apple ID creation, Apple should warn users not to store credentials to password reset accounts on their registered devices. Third, on Find My iPhone, Apple should differentiate between likely temporary and likely permanent loss scenarios and in the latter, should advise users to immediately revoke the device's access to all accounts it has credentials for, including email, social media, and telephony accounts. Fourth, the iOS lock screen should not display whether the phone is protected by a simple 4-digit PIN or a more complex passcode, and on devices with Touch ID, it should not display whether fingerprint authentication is being used. Fifth, and most importantly, upon reconnecting to the internet, iOS should not allow email retrieval before the device's wipe or don't wipe status can be retrieved from Find My iPhone. These and other security flaws in iCloud and iOS 7 are amplified by the introduction of Touch ID, making the iPhone 5S with its fingerprint sensor potentially less secure than any other iDevice.